In Lakota culture, we have a ceremony that's called Uipi. And this is a ceremony that can only be done by Uipi men. Let me give you a little history on that so you know what it's about, okay? There's an old story that talks about. See, there's a character in our story by the name of Iktomi. And before he was Iktomi, he was somebody else. And he was a very, very wise person. However, there's something about his appearance that's kind of funny. And so people, so he was, let me say this first. He was, a counselor to this organization called Wakantanka. Wakantanka is not God. It's not Jesus Christ. It's not the Creator. It's not Tongashila. When people talk like that, that's Christian way of thinking. What I'm talking about is information that existed, long time ago, and this is called Lakota Star Knowledge. And in these stories, it explains how things developed, not only in the universe, or our universe, but the one, also our solar system, our galaxy and our solar system, and our Earth. Yeah, and it goes further to each one of us. But everything is reflecting a sacred event that happened in the beginning of this universe. And that is reality begins within. That's something I explained at the beginning of the show. And during this time when the Earth was new and people, we come onto Earth from under the ground. Yeah, we're brought as a different form from the center of the universe, and then we're placed under the Earth. Then the Wakantanka do something to these forms, and from that come a nation called Pte Oyate. This is not buffalo people. A lot of people today make that mistake. Yeah. Let me explain why. Most of the information that you're going to read in books today, in most books, is incorrect. Let me veer off a little bit, and I'm going to explain to you why. See, in the late 1800s, we were placed on reservations, and it was a very dire straits time. These reservations were like prison camps. We were not allowed to leave. If you look at photos from that time period, you see nothing but sad Indians, and Indians that are barely living. Yeah, we're not allowed to leave those camps, and we're not allowed to have any kind of weapons to hunt. So all we have to eat is whatever the government gives to us. And the American government would send out food, but then a lot of this food was hijacked, by people. This food started out from Chicago or Kansas City, and it would come by train. And but on the way, there were really no good businessmen that would steal parts of it, or they would substitute it with old food. So by the time it got to the Indians, it was really no good. And then, because of that, we developed high blood pressure, heart problems, heart diseases, diabetes, because a lot of it was powdered food, but it was really buggy, so people had to try to take the bugs out of there, and they could just, make whatever they could from that. And that resulted in very greasy, fatty foods. And this is where the time period where something called fry bread comes from. Yeah? All over America, people developed recipes like this. In Canada as well. it's a universal thing, but it's not a traditional food. It's a really unhealthy food. Tastes good, but it's really unhealthy. Yeah. Anyway, during this time period, our bodies are becoming attacked with illnesses, and we can't fight it, and people are dying because of these things. And then they told us our language was now illegal, so we were hit emotionally. Yeah. Then they said our ceremonies were also illegal, so now we're hit spiritually. Yeah. This is 3 of the 4 parts of the mind that are now being attacked. Three of the 4 parts of the self, not the mind. 3 of the 4 parts of the self that are being attacked. The self is consisted of the physical body, the soul, the emotions, and the mind. They're all connected. As I said earlier, where they connect is deep inside you, and that's your sacred center. Okay? So 3 of those 4 parts were attacked, and eventually the 4th part went down. We became incredibly weak-minded. By that time, churches came to the reservation, and the priests learned our ways. They learned our language. And they said that our ways conflict with the Bible, therefore our ways come from Satan. And in our weak minds, we believed it. Yeah, and they said that life would get better for us if we joined their churches. So that's what we did. We didn't want our children to starve. So we started joining these churches and started believing whatever the priest was saying. We became brainwashed. So now, children born in the early 1900s were born into very Christian homes. And they didn't learn these stories. They didn't hear them because the parents didn't want to talk about that because that's what got them in trouble. Yeah, they were made to feel ashamed to be Indian. Now, language was spoke in the home, so people did learn how to speak their languages, but the ceremonies were not. Some people still did them on the sneak, out in the country. But overall, most Lakota people stopped doing ceremonies. Then the boarding school experience came where children were taken away from the reservations and, they were taken when they were really young and, sent hundreds of miles away, sometimes even thousands of miles away, to these schools where they were tortured into speaking English. And they learned to be abusive. They learned to become victims. There was no adult, healthy role models there to emulate from. So they learned how to abuse. They learned how to become victims. A lot of children were killed in these schools due to physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse. They were traumatized. And so, they didn't really survive. They're more like in post-traumatic stress disorder. So even though they lived through it, they didn't really survive. Well, when they grew up and they had children, they didn't want their children to go through that. So they didn't tell them anything. They didn't even teach them the language. Yeah, they didn't know anything about star knowledge because their parents didn't tell them anything at all. So those are the old people of today. Yeah, the elders that you see on the reservation, most likely they're born in the 1920s, 1930s. They never learned these star knowledge stories because, they were born in Christian homes. They might know the language, but that's all. Yeah, and since they accepted Christianity, that's the way they use the language too. So, for example, I said earlier, Wakantanka is an organization, but the Christian priest said it's God. So if you ask any elders today on a reservation, most of them are going to tell you it means God, the Creator. That's your evidence of the brainwash. Because really it doesn't mean that. It's an there's several organizations with that same name. So you see how we started to lose things really bad now, really fast. And so any time they talk about the stories, they talk about it from a Christian perspective. So good versus evil is now applied to those stories. In the original form, the stories don't have that, good versus evil. Yeah? There's no us against them. It's all about learning. But today it's not that way. So today you hear Indians talking about good spirits and bad spirits, but back in the Star Knowledge days that didn't happen. They didn't talk like that. Yeah? And Indians started to call God Tongashila. So today you hear people praying like that. That's a Christian influence. Whenever you hear somebody pray and say Tongashila Wakantanka, that's not traditional. That's Christian influenced. Yeah? Because we don't have a one God concept. We don't have a heaven or a hell. Our Star Knowledge stories say it's something completely different. And you see, this is why the priests of the late 1800s told us that that obviously must come from Satan, because it doesn't agree with the Bible. Do you see what I mean? So that's why today most of what you read in books is false. It's dualistic information. It's not original information. Yeah? In our stories, it talks about this person named, I'm not going to say his name because it is a sacred name, and but he was considered a very wise, very young, but very wise. And the Wakantanka organization asked him for advice all the time. But there was for thousands of years this is the way the situation was. But the thing is, he kind of looks funny. Yeah? And so whenever he has a funny walk, and so when he would come to their meetings, they ask him to come, he walks funny, so they kind of laugh in the beginning, but then they apologize, and they don't mean anything mean, and they're really immature, yeah, because you have to remember, this is the creation, this is the beginning of the earth, so nothing is perfect, nothing was meant to be perfect, yeah. Perfection is an illusion. It's a dualistic concept, which means it's unhealthy because it creates unrealistic expectations. Yeah. So you have members of the Wakantanka. It's showing that they're not perfect, that they're growing, that they're learning too. Yeah. There is no such thing as perfection. It's not meant to be that way. Yeah. Perfection indicates an end, and there is no end. Yeah, there's always beginnings, but no end. That's really key here. Okay, so this guy, this wise person, he decides to play a trick on the Wakantanka, and it backfires. It really backfires. And as a result, he's changed from this wise person to what he's known as today, which is Iktomi. Now, I'm telling you a very fast version of the story. The story is actually longer. It has a lot of drama in there. And because of this incident, we develop the male cycle and the female cycle. Our language changes in which women end their sentences one way and men end their sentences another way, even though it's the same language. Yeah. There is no female version of our language. It's just the sentence endings and a few words. Other than that, it's the same language. Yeah? That all happened because of this incident. Anyway, so after that, he became known as the trickster. Yeah? His name is Iktomi, which means spider. So from then on, he goes around and he tries to trick people. And if you are not on guard, meaning if you're not living a healthy life, he can trick you. Because he can appear to be really nice, friendly, good-looking, promising you this, promising you that, and then he does his trick. Yeah, the stories can be funny, they can be incredibly vicious. Yeah, and it's not that time of the year anymore to tell those stories. See, Star Knowledge says you're supposed to only tell Iktomi stories when the spiders go under the ground. That's during very winter time, yeah, blizzard time. But it's not that time now. Yeah, that time is over. So I can talk about him, but I can't tell those stories. Not now. Yeah. But anyway, see, that's lost too. Yeah. So today, people have these camps, in the summertime, and they sit at the campfire and start talking, telling these stories. That's really, really inappropriate, and that shows you again, how much we've lost. Yeah, how much of this traditional protocol that we've lost. The people just do things anyway, and they don't even care. People who are doing ceremonies probably shouldn't even be doing them. Certain things like that. There's all kinds of customs that are being broken by our own people because we lost all that information during the time we became Christians. Yeah, or Christian influence. Because most people don't go to church today, but they still think in that dualistic way. Yeah, that good versus evil way. Us against them. If you don't agree with me, you're wrong. Yeah? That kind of way. Yeah. And Iktomi is always playing tricks. Yeah, he's always tricking people. And finally, it gets to the point where he's walking down the road, and animals see him, and they're like, here comes Iktomi, get away! Yeah, everybody takes off. Right? And wherever he goes, people take off because they know he's going to try to trick them. So he gets to the point where he's like, gee. So he says, well, today I'm going to do the ultimate trick. He said, I'm going to trick myself. See, this is Iktomi thinking, yeah? I'm going to trick myself. He's all proud, he says that. So then he proceeds to think, how am I going to trick myself? Oh, man. So, anyway, who says that, yeah? I'm going to trick myself. Oh, that's a funny guy, but he's also dangerous too, yeah? But the thing is, the whole point is how he thinks. He's teaching you something. And he's teaching you if you understand his way of thinking, it's not about tricking. Yeah, it's not about that at all. It's something different. If you can pick up on that, you're going to realize he's one of the greatest teachers ever. Yeah. So you have to see dualistic people right away. They classify him as he's the bad guy. Yeah. That he's. I bet you even there's some people that are saying that he's Satan. Yeah, that he's the devil. No, he's not. Because remember, we don't have good versus evil in our culture. Yeah, that does not exist. So he's not an evil guy. It's you have to look. You can't look at it with dualistic eyes. You have to look at it from a Lakota perspective. But today, most Lakota people see things in dualistic eyes, so they don't really understand who he is. Yeah. So this makes it easier for him. Do you see what I mean? So anyway, Iktomi decided to trick himself. Yeah? And what do you think he's going to do? What do you think he's going to do? How is he going to trick himself? We'll see if we can figure that out. He went to a man and gave him, he said he appeared as a spider, yeah, to this man. And as a spider, he said, I'm giving you power to help the people. He said, this power is going to help you to cure certain diseases, and it's also going to help people find things, including themselves. Yeah? But he said to this man, the more every time you do a ceremony to help these people, some of this power goes away. Then eventually it's going to be all gone, he said. But you have it, he said. You have power. You have some of my power, he said. And you use it to help people. So then he proceeded to show this man how to do this ceremony. And this ceremony is what today is called Uipi. Now I'm not going to go into detail on that ceremony because it's a sacred thing. Yeah, but I'll tell you some of the things that happen as a result. Yeah, and it's really interesting information. I mean, there's really, it's amazing what can happen. Yeah, but there's a concept that you have to know first before I can continue, and this concept is called tu. Yeah, it's a guttural sound in there. That's a T. Yeah, I read it with a dot over it. Tu. Tu is a spiritual essence that's connected to you. Yeah. So, like for example, it's in your clothes. You know, it's in the things you make with your hands, like food or items. Yeah. Maybe you're working woodwork. Yeah. That's that. So your part of your energy goes in there. So we're very careful on where we leave things. If you just leave your jacket all over the place, an unhealthy energy could touch it. And see, it's that your tool is in that jacket, and no matter what, it's still connected to you. No matter how far away that jacket is from you, it's still connected to you through tool. So if an unhealthy energy touches that jacket, it travels through that tool connection and gets to you, and it could make you sick. Yeah? This is a concept that a lot of tribes have. They just have it, they call it whatever it is in their language, because we all have different languages. Yeah? So, it's in your hair as well. So that's why you're supposed to be really careful, when you travel someplace and how you dispose your hair. It's in your shit. It's in your toenails, your fingernails. Yeah, so when you're you're cutting your fingernails or taking a number 2, you're supposed to be, you kind of have to be careful on that. Yeah, so because if something unhealthy gets on it, could make you sick. And this it affects babies more because they're new. Yeah, so like in the today. I should say in the 70s, because now this information is pretty much lost. But in the 70s, people, young ladies in the 1970s, they just buy Pampers, for their babies, and when they're traveling someplace and they change their babies' Pampers, they just throw the Pamper out, out while the car's driving. They just throw it in the ditch. And old grandmas, they really get nervous when that happens. They say, hey, you might be prepared to stay up all night because you're not supposed to do what you just did. And of course, these young ladies, they don't believe in that. But sure enough, that night, the baby cries throughout the night. It's restless because a coyote probably walked by it. See, there's something about coyotes and wolves. They have tool in their hair that all they have to do is walk beside our tool, and when it mixes, something not too good happens. And this again is also explained in another story. Why? Yeah, that's really another interesting story. How that happened? Yeah, why is this way? And that story has to do with when we first came on the earth. Yeah. When we were under the earth as Pte Oyate. That's not buffalo people. That they're human in form, but they're not human. When they come on the earth, that's when they transform into humans. And at that time, they were tricked. They were tricked to come by Iktomi. Guess who? Iktomi. Yeah. At the same time, the wolves couldn't find any food, So Iktomi couldn't find any friends, so he said to the wolves, if you be my friends forever, he said, I can bring you a food. So the wolves reluctantly agreed. Yeah, they were facing starvation. Iktomi told the wolves, these people, their blood tastes really good, he said. And when you get a taste of it, you're going to want more. So he was tempting the wolves. Yeah. So he set this all up so when we came out on the surface of the earth, we were surrounded by wolves. And the wolves went to work. Yeah, they attacked us in great numbers. And most of us were annihilated by the wolves. And just a little bit of us were left and we escaped. See, Iktomi set all that up. Yeah. So because of that exchange, that traumatic incident that happened, this is why wolves are considered an enemy. Yeah. Then we got in trouble on the earth. Then the rest of the Pte Oyate came on the earth, and when they came on, they transformed into buffalo people. Yeah. This is why Lakota people consider buffalo people their closest relatives, because we both evolved from the same being. Buffalo people, they're not called Pte Oyate, they're called Ptechchaka Oyate. A buffalo is Ptechchaka. Tatanka is a buffalo bull. It's not buffalo, it's the bull. Okay? And we were called Ikche Oyate. So this is why we're considered close. And so whatever happens to the buffalo happens to us and vice versa. So buffalo and wolves, natural enemies. And whoever is an enemy to the buffalo is also an enemy to us. And so this is why, because of that, I'm telling you a really fast version. Yeah, for the sake of time, I'm really telling you a fast version of the story. So anyway, because of this, this is why we have to be careful where we throw our where we leave our hair, where we leave our clothes. We have to watch out for that, because if coyotes are part of this deal too. Yeah, if a wolf or a coyote walks beside it, it causes harm, and it could influence something unhealthy to happen to us. So you really have to be careful with this tone, yeah, with your belongings and stuff like that. But likewise, there's a really nice element to this too. Like if you have a best friend or somebody who's special to you, then that person's going to move away. Yeah, you give them something that belongs to you, and this shows that person that you trust that person. Yeah, and that means there'll still be a connection, even though you're far away from each other. That person has some of your tone, and you're trusting that person with it. And so that person will then give you something from him or her. Yeah, so that you have that person's tone as well. Because you trust each other. You earn that from each other. So in a way, you still have each other, even though you're thousands of miles away. Do you see what I mean? That's a really nice aspect of that. And when people in the Hunka, spiritually adopt one another, they also do this too, exchange clothes. Yeah, because they trust each other. So that's okay. So you have to understand that before I go into this weekly discussion. Yeah, that's why I'm talking about that. Okay, so I hope that it was enough information to explain that. Normally, I have when I talk about tone, I can talk about that for hours. Yeah. But I have to make a shortcut today, because that's just a part of my discussion. Okay, so I hope you understand that, and something to really be careful about. Yeah, that you don't just leave your belongings all over the place, and because when you do, something could go wrong with you. Yeah, well, I have a cousin that was like that. He just left his stuff anywhere, didn't even care. And as he got older, he kind of went goofy in their mind. Now, some people might attribute that, because he just left things all over the place. Like, maybe. I'm not going to be the judge on that, though. Yeah, it could be possible. Um, anyway, that so now that you hopefully understand what tone is, now I come back to this Iwipi ceremony. Okay? Like I said, I'm not going to talk about the ceremony, but I'm just going to focus on the results because the ceremony is sacred. Yeah? And the results are that, or like say let me say some of the reasons first why people do this. Some reasons could be somebody has a disease, and this is a way to treat them, their physical ailment. Yeah? And to cure them, but then that person has to still do things. That the patient still has to do things. He has to live in such a way that the cure stays in effect. In other words, just you go to some person and you get healed, then that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. You still have to maintain it. Yeah. So otherwise, it might come back and it might be worse. So you have to maintain it. Yeah, you have to embrace it. You have to make it a part of your lifestyle, in that maintenance of it. Yeah, maintaining the cure. That's what we learn concerning healing. Yeah. Okay. So that's one reason. Another reason could be somebody's lost. You don't know where they are. Don't know where they are at. Now, what you could do is you find a Yuwipi man. You have to take opari. Yeah, this is giving traditional tobacco to the Yuwipi man, and then ask him the question. That's a formal thing. Yeah, and then it's up to him whether he's going to decide to help you or not. Now, let's say he decides to help you. Okay. Let's say you lost your grandma. Maybe you never even met your grandma. Maybe your grandma disappeared before you were even born. You never knew what happened to her. Yeah, even your mom. Let's say that's her mother. Okay, and let's say the mom, she was a baby when this lady disappeared, so she never even knew her mother. But nobody ever found her. They never knew what happened to her. So now, let's say, you want to find this lady. So you go to a Yuwipi man and you opari him. You give him some tobacco and you ask him the question. You say, I want to find my grandma. My mom never met her. You talk about, you just say, they're your situation. Yeah. So let's say the Yuwipi man agrees. Okay. So he tells you what to do to prepare, what items to do, and they set up a location where they're going to do it, and then they proceed. Yeah? Now, during this ceremony, there's a way where, you have to bring something that belonged to that person who's missing. In this case, let's say that they still have a dress from this woman. So they bring the dress to the Yuwipi man, and they do the ceremony. And when they do the ceremony, they look at this. When I say they, I'm talking about the holy person and his helpers. Okay? The helpers are not human. Let me just say it like that. Okay? These beings, they look at this dress and they see something that we cannot see. They see the tone. Okay? Now, they look at it, then they look around. See, to them, space and time is not the same like it is for us. Yeah? Us humans. We associate 3 dimension. Yeah? But these beings, they don't. So they can see it. Don't matter where it's at. It doesn't matter how far it is. They see it. They see where it's located. And then they hone in on it and describe the location, and if it's inside something, they're going to say what it's inside, and then they tell the holy person in sacred Lakota language. Because see, there's 2 versions of our language. So they're going to tell this holy person where it's at. I mean, this Yuwipi man, not a holy person, a Yuwipi man. They're going to tell him where it's at. And they're going to describe the location. They're going to say, there's a tree there, and where the lady is located is on the north side of the tree. Yeah. And they're going to describe the whole area, what it looks like, and how far away it is, what direction. And so they end the ceremony, and they always bring food in the ceremony. Yeah, they put it in the middle, and it's like a feast. You have to provide a feast, and then these beings that are there that see the tune, they take the tune from the food, and then they leave. Yeah. And then after that, everybody else can eat the food. And the food has to be consumed. In other words, you can't take leftovers. You have to be there and get full. You can't take leftovers home. And the Yuwipi man is going to be the last one. So he feeds everybody. Here, have some more. And he's going to try to make you have thirds and fourths, yeah? Because, see, the reason why is whatever food is left over, he has to eat it. And he can't leave that location until he's eaten it all. So really, good Yuwipi men are really big, yeah? And so after that, it's over, and then he tells the person where to go, to locate it. So let's say you go over there, and sure enough, they get permission from the landowner, and they say maybe there's something there, that according to your family history or something, and they're there to witness it too. So people dig there, and sure enough, they pull up a skeleton. Yeah? They found the body. See, something like that happens through the ceremony. Something like this happened. I'm not going to say on which reservation, but I know this to be a true story. It happened when I was still living in South Dakota. There was a Lakota woman who she disappeared when she was 19 years old. And we're talking, I have to do the math here, yeah? I don't want to make a mistake on this. Let's see. Let me do the math really quick here. Okay. All right. To this year is 2014. Let's minus 25. This is the grandson. Okay, he was born in 1989. His mother was about 30 years old when he was born, so let's subtract 30, and we get 1959. So the mother was 1 year old when her mother disappeared. So we add 1 year. So 1960, this woman disappeared. Yeah, she just disappeared. Nobody knew where she was. They lived out in the country, and back then everybody rode horse. Yeah, and so she went out, and actually I think I'm being really conservative here. I'm going to move it back to 1940. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure this was even older than that. 1940. Yeah, that's right. That's a great-grandson that I'm talking about. Okay, so let's move it back to 1940. So 1940, this lady disappeared around that time, maybe even earlier. And like I said, in those days, not that many people had cars. So people got around on horseback in the summertime, in the winter too. And, I mean, there were cars. It's just that not many people had them. Yeah. So this lady was on horseback, and she was going to ride into town and get some groceries and then ride back. And She left on horseback and nobody ever found her. She never showed up at the town, and nobody saw her because people live out in the country. There's a lot of space between houses, and nobody saw anything. Yeah, and she had her baby girl. Yeah, this is she was I gotta put this at 1930. Yeah, I have to put this at 1930. They didn't see her at all. And shoot, when I think about it, it might even be older than that. Yeah, it might even be more than that. Anyway, it's in the early 1900s. I'll just say it like that. They never found her. They never knew what happened. And now the story I'm telling you, this story is going to take place in the late 1980s. Okay, the late 1980s is when this story I'm telling you took place. The lady she went to Pine Ridge to find a Yuwipi man to help her find her mother. We're talking 1980s. Okay, the mother disappeared. Oh no, her grandmother, disappeared much, of course, in the early 1900s. They went to find a Yuwipi medicine from Pine Ridge to help in this matter. They found one, and he did a ceremony, found the location. They went there. They found nothing. So she went to another one, still from Pine Ridge. And they went to that. That guy said it was that the body was located in another location. They went there. There was nothing. So she gave up hope on Pine Ridge. Then she went to Rosebud. And then she, went to several Yuwipi men there. Again, false leads. Yeah, they found the locations where these Rosebud Yuwipi men were saying the body was, and nothing was there. They didn't find anything. Then she went to Cheyenne River. There's a real young guy at that time. He's just about a year or so older than me. See, in the 1980s, I was a young guy. That's why I'm saying that. So he's also a holy man too. He's not just a Yuwipi man. He's a holy man as well. And those are two different things. Yeah, but he was both. And so he did a Yuwipi ceremony for her. Said that the body. He told the location where the body was, and he even identified who killed her. Yeah. He said it was. It wasn't him. It was these beings that were telling him. They saw it. They looked at the tomb of the skeleton, and from that tomb they could identify. They could tell what happened to her. That she was raped by both men. She was raped by two men, and one man was her uncle, and the other one was a close family friend. So they gang raped her for several hours, and then they killed her. They smashed her head with a rock. Yeah, until she was dead, and then they buried her. So they located where the grave was, and so by the 1980s, one man had already died, and the other one was in his 90s, and he knew, he knew that they're getting close, and somebody told him that, hey, they did a Yuwipi for, this one, our great grandmother, and so he knew they were going to find it. So then he killed himself, yeah, in his 90s, and he killed himself. And so they went to that location, they dug it up, and sure enough, that the skeleton was there, and the skull was smashed. Yeah, so then they verified, that what happened. Yes, she was that most likely she was sexually molested. Yeah, her own uncle. Yeah, her I think it was her mother's brother and his friend, who was also a family friend. They raped her and then they killed her. So she never got that far. They saw her riding and they went after her and assaulted her. Out in the middle of nowhere, yeah? Because that's how it is on a reservation. Out in the middle of nowhere, anything could happen. That's an example of what can happen in a Yuwipi ceremony. So they were finally able to, put the body to rest. They had the same man, the UEP man. They had him officiated as a holy man because he was also a holy man. So he went and they smudged the area, to get the tone of the crime away, because see, what you do can leave an essence behind. When you commit a crime, it can leave the essence behind, like a tape recorder. It records the incident. Yeah. So the holy man went there and cleansed it, and kind of balanced out the energy there, so that trauma wasn't there anymore. And he did the same thing to the skeleton, and then they were able to put the body to rest in a good way. So they brought peace. But that tore apart that family because, it was shocking, and the descendants of the uncle were kind of upset, because in some way they were angry, but at the same time they were apologetic, and it was a sad thing. But it wasn't their fault. It was the uncle's. Look at what the uncle did. Yeah, even after he killed himself, he divided his own family by raping his own niece. So that's what they found out. This is a true story. Yeah, I know the people involved. So this is what happens. This is the kind of thing that can happen when you find a real UEP man. See, like I said, the lady, she went to Pine Ridge and talked to two of them. They did ceremonies for her, came up with false leads. They did the same thing on Rosebud, came up with false leads. They used this guy on Cheyenne River, they found her. Now you tell me who's the real one. You see what I mean? A lot of times on the reservations, people pretend to be something they're not. They're not really medicine men. They're not really holy men. They're not really UEP men. They're just fakes. But they know information, and then they twist it. And people believe it without question, because it's their uncle, it's their father, it's their grandfather. So they believe it without question. That's a problem. If you don't question, then you don't know yourself. Yeah? So that's an example. Okay? Anyway, talking a little bit about UEP, and I gave you a true story account of one. Now, like I said, I'm not going to tell what happened, because that's sacred information. Yeah, what they were doing inside during the time of the ceremony itself. But the result was amazing. Yeah, and what happened, and it just goes to show you that back in the old days, we really had we had our way of doing things that really helped the people. Now, that ceremony that I just described to you was classified by the priests as from Satan. Yeah, because dualistic people will say things like, well, yeah, the devil will help you, but he's doing that to trick you. But once he has you, then he's going to double cross you. Don't think so, folks, because Satan is an illusion, and so is God. Yeah, these are ideas of that were created by man to subdue others, to control them. And this has always been that way, yeah, in a dualistic society. And whatever they don't understand, they don't try to understand it, and they're quick to judge it, yeah. If they don't agree with it, and immediately they say, this is coming from the devil, yeah. This is not right, and so therefore, this is evil. That is how a dualistic world works. Okay? So, even today, there's a lot of Indians that are very, very Christian influenced that they don't want to talk about these things because they're going to say that's really the devil doing that. And it just goes to show you how effective the brainwashing has been, yeah, among our people. to the point where they become incredibly scared of these things. And actually, it's a beautiful thing, yeah. Um, and this was all happened in a story in which Iktomi said, "I'm going to trick myself." That's an off guy, yeah. But look at what we got, yeah. Look at the ceremony that we got from that. This ceremony is older than the sun dance, yeah. This ceremony is older than lots of the other ceremonies. This is we're getting really mega ancient when we're talking about that. Yeah, this is a very, very, very ancient thing, and there are some places in Lakota country where it is still done. And there are still Weepy people that see the way men become this is they're called by Iktomi. Yeah, they're called into doing this. They're called into it's a type of being a healer. Yeah, and you know what? These are the only people that have power to do these ceremonies. Yeah. When you're talking about holy people are called by these beings that we don't see, but they are there because we see the effects, we hear the effects of what happens, and some people can see them, but only because they let you. Yeah, animals see them as well, and these beings choose who the holy people are. In other words, you don't decide. This is not like a profession where you can say, "Oh, I'm going to go to Holy Man University and major in Holy Man and and take a shamanistic course." And it doesn't work like that. Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous to think like that. Yeah, to think that you can learn this in a course is dualistic thinking. Yeah, this is very, very Western, and so that's how that goes. Yeah, that's just the way it is. And so to me, it's a really beautiful thing because, as I said, it is scary, but when you have knowledge of it, then it's not scary. As you're participating in such a ceremony, you just go in with an open mind, yeah, and you have knowledge. It's important to have the knowledge, so when whatever happens, you go with the experience as it's happening, and then you're becoming a part of the experience when you do that, and you don't even think about being scared, yeah. You realize that your attendance is actually a part of the ceremony too. Yeah, and you might even get an answer. Yeah, the ceremony is for everybody actually. Yeah, because sometimes people in attendance, they might even get an answer to something they were thinking about that they never even told anybody. They might actually receive an answer there. Yeah, so it's actually a beautiful thing. And just think, the priest said that this was from the devil. Yeah, that if if the story that I told you about, if that family kept thinking like Christians, they would have never known. That's sad, I think, if you never know. So what I know of other instances of these kind of stories too, where similar outcomes happen, and they're just amazing. They're just fantastic stories, and it's very humbling, yeah, when you think about it. Like I said, it was not just to find things; it was also to heal. Yeah, it was also to heal people, and all kinds of interesting information. You can be gained through such an experience, and like I said, if you don't know what's going on, and if you believe in good versus evil, this ceremony is going to scare the shit out of you. Yeah, so you have to really have the correct mindset. When you look at it from a Lakota perspective, a star knowledge perspective, then as it's happening, like I said, you just take it in as it's happening, and you realize it's really a wonderful thing that's going on. And when it's over, it is a cause to celebrate. Yeah, it is a cause for rejoicing. That's why they bring a lot of food. Yeah, to have a good time afterwards, because there was something fantastic just happened. Well, that's how that works. So Yuipi men, they receive this power from Iktomi, and until every time they do a ceremony, some of that power leaves, because that power is making the ceremony happen, and eventually they run out. Then they're done. Yeah, they don't have to do that anymore. That's how it works. Yeah. In other situations, when you're talking about holy people, as I was beginning to say, and I forgot to finish that thought, and let me finish that. Holy people are chosen by these sacred beings that also are working in the Yuipi ceremony. These beings choose holy people. In other words, you can't just be one because you want to be one. You can't, do a sun dance or humblecha to be one. They choose you, and then they teach you after that, or you receive instruction from another more experienced holy person, and they have no power whatsoever. Yeah, they have absolutely no power. It's these beings that work through the holy person, but they actually have no power. Whereas with Yuipi men, it's Iktomi who gives power to the Yuipi men. Do you see that? Do you understand that? That's how that works. Now, just to complete this discussion, you notice I've been saying men. Okay. Now, first of all, let me explain medicine man first. Okay, medicine men, what they do is they work with plants, herbs. They know the songs to use and sing in preparation and administration of those potions or cures to people who are sick. That's the extent of their calling. And other medicine men can choose younger ones, and because they're going to see that there's something about somebody that is just they have what it takes to be a medicine man. So they will choose, and then they teach that person. They teach them what plants to use and what songs to sing, with the plant and things like that. That's the extent of their work, but it is a great work. Holy people commune with the holy beings in the different language, in the sacred Lakota, and what they do is really they're like a glove, and what's in the glove are the beings, the sacred beings. The sacred beings are wearing the glove and doing the work. So it's not the holy people that are doing the cure. They're like the hollow bones. They're like they're just the way to get it done. But who's really doing the cure are these sacred beings. Okay, that's the difference there. A holy person can change the ceremony according to the situation. Medicine people can't do that. So there are differences. And the Yuipi people are working in a different segment. Now, a holy person can be a medicine man too, and he can also be a Yuipi person, but it doesn't work the other way. That's how it is. Okay. Now, concerning women, they can do this, but only after menopause. They have to go through menopause first. See, there's an old Lakota Star Knowledge story that explains this, and I kind of covered that. It's how Iktomi came to be. He used to be somebody before. Remember what I was saying earlier? One of the outcomes of that story establishes that women, they receive 3 gifts, and they receive it within their bodies. It's within their bodies, and men don't have that. So this elevated women above men, and that's the way it was for thousands of years. And then men were given 3 ceremonies to bring ourselves back into balance with women. And so for that reason, only men are supposed to do those 3 ceremonies. Women already have it. It's in their bodies. It's in their development. So women have 3 more stages of development than men do. So as a result, we have to do things, yeah, to maintain the balance between man and woman, male and female. So this is why when when people are called, by the beings, by the sacred beings, or Iktomi, or whatever, this only mostly happens to men, because this is part of our coming into balance with women. Now, women can be called too for sacred people, yeah, and medicine people. They can be called for those two, but they can't do the work until after they go through menopause. Because if they do it before that, it offsets the balance between male and female energies. Do you see what I mean? So this is the reason why. So there are holy women. Yeah, some of my teachers were holy women, and they this is what I learned from them, is that they couldn't do it. They couldn't do their work until they went through menopause. Some of them received their spiritual education while they were still in their menstruating years, but they couldn't do ceremonies until they were done menstruating, yeah, until they went through menopause. So that's how that works, yeah, in our culture. But UEP only applies to men, okay? And it's not because men are better. It had absolutely nothing to do with that. See, when people think, well, it's because men think they can do anything, this is dualistic thinking. Yeah, so you have to remember, when you look at our culture, you have to look at it through our perspective, not yours. If you're not Lakota, yeah, you have to look at it through our perspective, meaning you also have to know these stories that explain to you why it's that way. Then when you do, then you receive the understanding. Yeah, then it makes sense. Just because men are the only ones that can be UEP people, it does not mean they're better. Yeah, it absolutely does not mean that. You always have to learn the full stories, yeah, the full versions. And unfortunately, thanks to that Christianity brainwashing that we experienced, that I talked to you about an hour ago, thanks to that experience, most of us today don't know that. So that's why we're quick to judge. Yeah, we say, well, shit, if a man can do it, then a woman can do it too. You see, that's not Lakota thinking. That's Western thinking. That's dualistic thinking. Because if you think like that, you have to apply that to the man too. Yeah, I mean, men should be able to say that too. If a woman is saying, well, if a man can do it, then I can do it too. That's not entirely true. It can only be true if the statement is true for men too. And it isn't. We cannot get pregnant. We cannot have babies. Until that happens, that statement will never be true. Yeah? That's coming from Star Knowledge, believe it or not. I used to have a grandmother, because she's gone now, but I had a grandmother who said that she was talking about these 3 ceremonies that I mentioned earlier. And she said women are not supposed to be doing that. She said if a woman does those ceremonies, that's the day that a man should be able to get pregnant and have a baby. So she's coming from a Star Knowledge point of view. And I met another lady from Cherry Creek, and her grandmother said the same thing too. So it's not just me. I'm not making this up. Yeah, I think this lady's name was Iris. She was a Lakota language teacher as well. Real nice lady. And that's what her grandmother told her too. That women are not supposed to be in sweat lodge. When you're in menstruating years, You're not supposed to be in a sweat lodge. You're not supposed to be in a sun dance. And you're not supposed to be on a vision quest. These are not for you. And it's not because you're less. It's because you already have something like this inside your body. This is what men have to do to come back into balance with women. So if women who are still in their menstruating years do these ceremonies, then men should be able to get pregnant and have babies. Do you see what I mean? You have to use that statement to apply to both genders. So when women say, well, if a man can do it, then we can do it too. You have to turn that around. And if it's true, then okay. Then it's true for women. But when you turn it around, and a man says, well, if a woman can have a baby, then a man should be able to too. Which is not possible. So therefore, that statement is moot. Yeah, it's not working. Yeah, that's how it is from the Lakota Star Knowledge perspective. So do you see what I mean? You have to know our perspective, which means you have to understand that our way of looking at things is different. And if you continue to look at it through dualistic eyes, which feminists do, including Indian women, then you are really missing it. Yeah? Then if you're a woman and you're looking at it through feminist eyes, you've thrown your heart on the ground. That's the old Cheyenne proverb. Yeah? And that's when you know your nation is dead. Yeah? I'll let you think about that. So that's the way it goes, yeah. The Mitaku FB, that's the way it is. Hechetuelo.